buildings and roadways. Natural objects such as rocks, hills, mountains, lakes, rivers, and streams have a meandering appearance to them following natural forces, taking the path of least resistance. Thus we do not see natural objects with repeated squares, triangles, circles, ovals, domes, centered objects, and other perfect geometric shapes. You simply just don't see them in nature on repeated patterns. Intelligently designed structures have engineered shapes to them, with lines that delineate repeated angles for walls, roofs, doorways, archways, foundations, and support with roadways for access. There is, therefore, obvious planning when you view a city, a town, or a building from aloft. Their duplicated hard forms differ from the random natural surroundings. Now in this view we're going to come in, you can't see anything as you come into planet Earth. What we're going to zero in on is Manhattan, and until you get very, very close, you see no signs of any artificial intelligence. But the minute you start closing in, all of a sudden the patterns begin to appear. Buildings, roadways, squares. You even have domes, arches, repeated patterns. Very, very obvious. Step pyramid is part of an inner city complex that lies in surrounded by an ancient wall structure, a curved wall structure. We're going to examine that wall. Anyway, as you see the ink lift coming in, you can see exactly the step pyramid is very, very visible. And it's a fairly large pyramid. The biggest pyramid of the entire group actually lies just inside the city wall structure and is therefore harder, I should say, to see. You can see it plainly enough, but it's a little more difficult to ascertain. But as we get closer in, you can see this step pyramid very, very readily. It's deeper than where the sunlight hits it. Actually, it's a little bit bigger than one might suspect. We have it shown it as a two-sided step pyramid, although it might very well be four-sided. We're viewing it from a frontal view, and therefore it could well be a four-sided pyramid. If so, the north and the south sides are in fact very, very steep, but it is possible that is an actual four-sided foot or pyramid. It's 300 feet long, 100 feet wide, and it's very typical of pyramids that are found in Mexico and South America. There are also Egyptian-style smaller pyramids on top of structures. In fact, there's a number of them on top of buildings. We're not exactly sure what that signifies, but they're there nonetheless. Here's an animation climbing up this step pyramid. We're quite sure there is a cap for royalty or deity or the king, whoever. That's generally what those are on top of the pyramids. Here is the inner city cluster with the inner city wall that is curved. This is actually a very incredible archaeological site. To find step pyramids of this type on the planet Mars is in itself remarkable. But the question remains, why did they build these kind of structures that we find on Earth? And some of the buildings are extremely high-tech looking. We're going to get into several of those in just a few minutes, but these structures of both ancient and modern design boggle the mind. What is going on Mars that combines all of these? It's like a capsule in time showing us Earth history. Evidence of artificiality. One, the rise and fall is incremental on both sides of the center top shrine. 2. The flat areas after each step up form perfect rectangles. 3. The top of the center forms a perfect rectangle, and the corners are very sharp, 90-degree corners on all of it. 4. The top cap has openings identical to those found in step pyramids in Mexico and South America. 5. It is totally anomalous to the surrounding terrain, rising off a totally flat floor or foundation. 6. The corners are all 90-degree corners and consistent with all engineered structures. 7. The rise and fall are identical in design on both sides of the center. 8. The presence of step pyramids in this complex is consistent with the huge statue, apparent shrines, and a presence of what appear to be several sphinx-like structures, which we'll cover in Volume 2. 9. The vertical, or the sudden vertical rise of the flat walls of the pyramids inside another wall area further confirms intelligent design. Conclusions: this structure and its companions meet all the criteria for artificiality and intelligent design. They were built by entities unknown, for reasons unknown, most likely for religious activities and possible sacrifice. Step pyramids and statues seem to go hand in hand with ritual sacrifice, and we are wondering if what that is doing on Mars, and what is the connection between Earth and Mars. Why are our structures so similar to what we're finding there, not only in scale but in shape and size? And I guess there's no way to know unless you go there. But now I want you to focus not so much on the building this time around, but on the land, the natural flow of land to the left of this structure. As we back away from it, you can see the terracing much more readily, and you will notice that this building just abruptly terminates that natural flow of the land. It has been carved right into the hill to the left of it. The pathway, as you can see, goes around the building and then continues on out of the picture. There is every evidence of artificiality. This large structure fulfills every parameter used to identify artificiality or intelligent design. 1. A rectangular shape repeated in a large protrusion, except it's smaller and longer. 2. Repeated flat walls. 3. Repeated 90-degree angle sharp corners. 4. A flat roof with a rounded cap structure that sits in the exact center of the roof. 5. A large pathway roadway that leads up to and goes into the flying buttresses and around the structure itself. 6. Large openings where one would expect to see large doors, windows, or even solar collectors. 7. This structure is totally anomalous to the immediate terrain, and in fact abruptly terminates the flow of the terrain as engineering would require. And that's one of the key signatures of artificiality. 8. The presence of buttresses supports is not something natural, but is something only engineers would accomplish. This very large statue is very, very clear. Typical of Egyptian style. Arms folded, legs together, feet protruding. It appears to have headdress of royalty when you examine it very closely. You probably cannot see that on the TV screen at all, but the head has 2 shadows going down each side, which are very symbolic of the flat headdress of the Egyptians. You can see how the arms are folded, which thrusts the chest out, and it thrusts the shoulders out. And I suppose some people might say, well, that's just a rock pile, and you're just reading something into it. Well, unfortunately, rock piles don't form that way. A rock pile, if it was a rock pile, would be wide at the bottom and narrow at the top because of the forces of gravity. This is almost just the opposite. This is clearly an engineered, carved statue. The question is, what is a statue about 175 feet to 200 feet tall, doing on the planet Mars? Who put it there? As we have said, the scale of the statue is about 175 feet. It could be over 200 feet tall. It's kind of hard to measure. The statue, number one, we're looking down at it from about a 42-degree angle. And number two, the statue appears to be leaning up against a cliff wall behind it, a solid rock foundation, which probably anchors this statue. It may have even fallen backwards on it at some time, maybe in the high winds of Mars. We're not sure. It definitely appears to be leaning backwards against the rock cliff that it has behind it. And we compared this to the Buddha found in Afghanistan that the Taliban blew up. That Buddha was about 180 feet tall. The comparison, the Buddha's head is 34 feet high, the head of the Martian statue 38 feet, the head of the Buddha is 29 wide, the head of the Martian statue is 37 feet, and the width at the shoulder is 60 feet, width of the shoulder of the Martian statue 75 feet, waist width 41, waist width 50 on Mars, leg length 80 feet on the Buddha, 75 feet. I mean, everything that you see compares properly in proportion to a humanoid statue. One, the proportions match those of a humanoid form. Two, proportions are very close to the giant Buddha. Three, it defies gravity if it's a rock pile, since the broad part is on the top and the narrow part is at the bottom. And that just doesn't happen naturally. And when you start putting all of this together, you come out with artificial. 4, indications are that the statue is carved out of the cliff, as is the Buddha. 5, the presence of a step pyramid next to the statue confirms it's a religious figure. 6, the head, arms, torso, legs, and actually the feet are clearly visible and in proper proportions one to another for humanoid form. Now, if you compare this to an Egyptian statue, you confirm the proportions and the religious nature of this artifact. 1, the royal headdress typical on most Egyptian statues. You may remember the difference in the head width between the Buddha, which does not have a major headdress, compared to the Martian one, which was wider. If you add the headdress, the width of the Martian statue's head is in perfect proportion to any humanoid head, and that's an incredible fact. 2, the folded arms are identical to many Egyptian statues, which thrust out the elbows, making the bulge in front as well as the arms are folded in the front. And it can be seen very, very clearly in the pictures. Very clearly that the shoulders are thrust up and the arms are folded, and you have that kind of a protrusion in the front. And if you allow for the headdress, why, it's pretty close. The legs and the feet are close together, typical of royal mummies and other statues that are found all over Egypt. And this is kind of an interesting thing for an archaeologist. What's an Egyptian-style statue doing on the planet Mars? Kind of an interesting